Hey everybody, Brian with Easy Retriever Training, and a little change of scenery for today. I normally find us outside working with Lady. Today I wanted to bring you inside of the kitchen. One, because it's supposed to get to be almost 100 degrees outside, and so when we go outside it's going to be much later. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the kitchen was the perfect setting. I wanted to talk about some questions that I've gotten through the website about what can dogs eat and what can't they eat. Sometimes we're in a situation where our dogs need a snack, and all we have on hand is some people food, or we want to give them, we're having a snack and we feel like they want a snack, and so we fish around, find something in the fridge, something that we think they're going to like. Just because we as humans like it and consume it doesn't mean that dogs can. I think most of us understand that. The first one I'm going to talk about, I think, is probably the most common one. And that's cocoa or chocolate. I think we've all heard about chocolate poisoning when it comes to dogs. It's chocolate of really any variety. There's varying toxicities. Some chocolates are more dangerous to dogs than others. The cocoa powders or the baking chocolates, the dark chocolates, those all are way more toxic than, say, milk chocolate that we're going to find in the average candy bar. But you'll notice that I've even got candy bars out here as being bad news. All chocolate is toxic, and so whatever you do, keep chocolate away from your dog. Make sure they can't get into it. Make sure you don't give it to them. The reason that chocolate is so dangerous is it has a compound called theobromine, easy for me to say, theobromine in it, and theobromine is it doesn't metabolize quickly in dogs like it does in people. The other thing that chocolate has in it that's extremely dangerous for dogs is caffeine. Theobromine and caffeine, they're both diuretics. They're heart stimulants. That's why you love your cup of coffee or your favorite Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper. Part of it is that pick-me-up. And trust me, if you're drinking Mountain Dew, it's not because you like the taste. It's got to be because of the caffeine in it. But the caffeine in it it's really bad news on dogs' hearts. They don't handle that very well. Another danger when it comes to these diuretics is that it will cause your dog to start urinating more, and you run the risk of dehydration. So some of the things that you want to look for if you think your dog may have gotten into it: nausea, dizziness, vomiting, diarrhea. Sometimes the caffeine, as that heart gets stimulated, sometimes you'll find that they have excessive energy. They're really, really hyper, more than normal. And so those are some things to look for. Again, just when it comes to these kinds of products, whether it's the store-bought chocolate candy bar or whether it's your cooking stuff, make sure that it's put away and that your dog can't get into it. So now that we've talked about the chocolate, let's talk about the grapes. And these are especially bad news. Grapes you want to avoid grapes even more so than the chocolate. While the chocolate in most cases won't be fatal to your dog, there are situations where it may or may not. Grapes can be, and you run a serious risk of your dog dying as a result if they get into it. The interesting thing about grapes is that scientists haven't identified exactly what the toxic compound is. Most vets believe that it's associated with the flesh. So even if you peel the grapes, the flesh of the fruit is still very, very dangerous. Raisins, the drying of it doesn't get rid of the compound. So grapes and/or raisins, keep them completely away from your dog. Some of the symptoms that come from this, they include lethargy or just weakness, abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea. Eventually they get dehydrated. Let's see, there was oral ulcers, anuria, which means that just very little urination, or anuria where they don't urinate at all, or slow urination where it's just barely coming out. All of those are symptoms. Ultimately, what happens when a dog consumes grapes or raisins, it leads to kidney failure. There's something about the compound in the grape that shuts down the kidneys, affects the urination, and ultimately it can send your dog into seizures or a coma and lead to death. So avoid grapes and raisins at all costs. Just because we don't know what in it is dangerous, we do know that it is dangerous, and we know that it's dangerous to all breeds, all ages, and dogs of all sizes. While some dogs can eat, there are some situations or some cases where dogs have been able to eat larger quantities before they've experienced the kidney problems. All dogs are affected. So if you're one who's sitting back saying, well, my dog's fine, he's able to eat grapes and we don't have any problem, I assure you that it's only a matter of time. You're killing your dog's kidneys. Don't give them grapes or raisins. This is another one. Not only don't give them to them, but make sure they can't get into them. So now that we've covered the grapes, let's talk about the onions. I've got onions, onion powder, some garlic powder here. The garlic use in our home is very limited due to my wife's extreme distaste for its smell, but we do have some garlic powder. In fact, any plant in the allium family, so leeks, chives, onions, garlic, all of those are extremely toxic to animals. They are to dogs and cats both, because they have a substance in them called N-propyl disulfide. And what this does, it's an oxidant, and our blood cells, our red blood cells, they're just tougher than dogs. And on our dogs, the red blood cells run through their veins. They have more places on each individual red blood cell at a microscopic level to where oxidants like this N-propyl disulfide can attach to. And so if it gets a lot of this attached to each red blood cell, the dog's body starts to recognize it as a foreign invader, and so they start to attack the cell just like they would a bacteria or a virus. And it can actually damage or even completely destroy the red blood cell. The result is the quality or the quantity and the quality of red blood cells in the dog declines, and as a result they end up very, very anemic. The symptoms can be anything from just, lethargic, lazy, very quiet, milling around, loss of appetite. The real extreme case is where a dog gets a very high dosage. The dog can actually faint because they're not getting enough oxygen to their brain because they've damaged so much of the red blood cells, and one of the jobs of the red blood cells is to carry oxygen throughout the body. Another way to see if your dog has gotten into, or to check for if your dog's gotten into onions or garlic, is to check their gums. And the gums, instead of being that healthy pink, will sometimes be a pale because, again, it has to do with the blood circulation and the red blood cell count. So check for that again, and it's any variety. So it's cooked onions or garlic, it's the powders. The powders are bad news as well. And when you think about all of the foods that we cook with and that we use onions and garlic with, the turkey at Thanksgiving with the seasonings, sometimes we think we can just throw a piece of meat on the ground. Anything that's been cooked with these substances, they need to be avoided at all costs. So there's 3 things that I think you ought to avoid at all. I've got another video out where we're going to talk about some things that are good for your dog, whether that's some oranges or some bananas, cheese, things that they can eat. But to get a fuller list, I've got a complete list of things that you have to make sure you avoid when it comes to feeding your dog human food. If you check our website at easyretrievertraining.com/dangerous foods, that'll take you right to it, or you can just click on the link that's in this, it's just right below here in the description of this video. Also, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be cranking out videos every week. Make sure you subscribe to that and turn on your notifications so that you can get notified every time we send out a new video, whether we're talking about food safety or travel safety or just some good training tips with regards to Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, and Retrievers of every kind. Again, I'm Brian with Easy Retriever Training.